So, you should have your character performing some animation. The next step is to render it out to create a final movie. Now normally you'd spend a bit of time sorting out your materials, lighting and cameras, but for this project we're only interested in your animation. However, there are a few things you can do to make your final piece look a lot better. The first thing is to hide any controllers and joints and just leave your geometry on show. Next, switch into the Viewport 2.0, which looks better. Switch on anti-aliasing, which will smooth the jagged look of your model. The next step is to subdivide your model to make it look much more smooth and organic. Most of David O'Reilly's models are set up so you can't select the geometry, so you need to activate selection. Go to the Layers panel and switch off the R, which stands for Restricted. You should then be able to select the model. Press 3 on the keyboard and your model should smooth and look a lot better. Your model may be in separate parts, so you'll need to select each part and press 3 on each bit. Next, switch off the wireframe on the model, so all you see is the shaded view. It's helpful to have a floor, so create a sphere and flatten it to form a disc by setting the Y scale to 0. Scale up the disc so you get a floor. Again, you can press 3 to smooth out the floor. To add a bit of depth to your model, switch on ambient occlusion. You should see little shadows on the model, especially around the feet. We're going to use a perspective view as our camera, so rotate your scene to get the best view you can for your animation. If you want to give your scene a background color, go to Camera Attributes Editor and pick a color for your environment. This will only be visible when you finally render. That's everything set up in your scene. Now let's turn to the render settings. Click on the Open Render View button. You may get a ropey render in the viewer, so we need to change a few settings. The first is the render engine. Change it to the 2.0 one like your scene. Also, switch off the View Transform button. You can brighten and darken the scene using the 2 sliders if you want. The normal practice for 3D is to render out your animation as a sequence of images and then make a movie from those images. It means if the computer crashes, you don't lose your entire movie, just the last frame you were rendering out. Let's set the frame range and name for our images. I'm going to save out my images as PNGs. The template for naming those images can be chosen, in this case the name plus the frame number plus the PNG extension. I can pick the start frame and the end frame, in this case from frame 1 to 50, and then the camera, which should be the perspective view. Also uncheck the alpha channel to save your coloured background. The size is going to be HD resolution, that's 1080. Under the Maya hardware settings, just check the anti-aliasing is switched on. Now try test render. It should look quite nice with your desired background colour. Now, to render out more than one frame, you need to do a batch render. Change the drop down to Render In and go to the render options in the menu bar. Choose Batch Render and the rendering of your entire sequence should begin. All your frames are stored here. Documents, Maya, Projects, Default, Images. Bring your frames into Premiere as an image sequence. Change the frame rate to 25 frames per second from the Interpret Footage option. And then you can export your final sequence as a movie from Premiere.